Hello and welcome to Learn Plus. My name is Brenda Bailey Hughes, and I am so glad that you are here today to learn more about managing your communication anxiety. In the comments, please let us know where you are from and where you're coming in from today so that we can just see all the geographic locations that are represented. And if you're a former student of mine or our guest speaker, Matt Abrahams, today, let us know so that we can give you a special shout out. Although you're probably tired of us calling on you in class, but one more time, if you are here and know us with our professorial hats on. As I mentioned, Learn Plus is a live monthly show so it's live. So go ahead and comment for us now. And we are looking for very actionable skills that you as business professionals and leaders can take away with you as soon as you log off this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are. We're also focused on learning and development professionals, knowing that you may not need these tips yourself, but you're learning them to coach others or to put training materials together for others. And so we both bring a rich history of education and teaching methods to the conversation today so that you know the tactics that we're talking about are rooted in science and rooted in experience and really do work for people. And again, our topic today, hi, Katie from Utah. Glad you're here. Shelby's here from LinkedIn production work that she does for us. She's behind the scenes. So if you have any technical issues, give a shout out to Shelby from Tennessee. She'll help you. Rama, welcome from Jordan. So glad that you are here. Good morning to you. Heba, hello. So glad that you're here. In addition to where you're from and saying hello, you might want to give us a particular communication situation that you absolutely dread. Is it public speaking, but only in large groups? Or is it all public speaking, little groups or big groups? Is it maybe conflict situations? Is it impromptu speaking when you haven't had a chance to prepare? Is it presenting on certain types of material or content? Let us know what types of scenarios really cause you dread and led you to be here today. Hi, Aaron and Tim, Tachana. So glad you're here. Another Nashville friend. There you go, Shelby. You're bringing in the Tennessee folks for us. So glad that you're here. And Tim's from Seattle. Great. So if you're thinking of a specific scenario that you dread, we then can kind of coach to that specific scenario as we're talking today. Our guest is Matt Abrahams. Matt teaches at the Stanford University's Graduate School of Business. So he has this wealth of experience coaching graduate students and executives and leaders like yourselves. Matt does keynotes. He does communication consulting. He has helped people overcome the very kind of nervousness about speaking or anxiety around speaking that maybe led you to be on this call today. And then his coaches, his clients, his students that felt that kind of anxiety that you might feel, they have gone on to do IPO roadshows, to do TED Talks. One even spoke at a World Economic Forum. I can't think of a more intimidating place to speak myself. So lots of great successes in Matt's story. And so he's also the host of a podcast that you're all going to love called Think Fast, Talk Smart, and the author of a fairly newly released book. And this is a spin on the podcast title, Think Faster, Talk Smarter, is the book that's out right now. He had a book before that you might also appreciate, very targeted on the anxiety piece of communication called Speaking Up Without Freaking Out. So I love your titles, Matt. Let's bring Matt in. Let's welcome him in. Matt, you're seeing a great group of folks joining us today. Hi, welcome.
I'm so excited to be with you, Brenda. Thank you for the invitation and the kind introduction.
Oh, thank you for being here. You see, we have added Sabrina here from LA, who hates the big audiences. Shelby despises presenting when she's supposed to be the expert. She says, I can talk all day, but you put me in that. You're the expert. We're looking to you. And she starts freezing up. Tammy from Marquette, Michigan, it's interviews. Ooh, I bet, Tammy, some people can relate to that. That sense of judgment is so prevalent when we're dealing with interviews. And we've got Katie, who's working in an interdepartmental communication, difficulty distinguishing where some items fall under different roles, how to approach the situation, how to sound collaborative rather than accusatory. Thank you, Katie. These are great questions, and give me and Matt some real specificity for our conversation today. Before we start coaching though, Matt, I would love to know what inspired you to even work in this space of communication and communication anxiety.
Well, so we can go way, way back if you'd like. So I'm the son of a teacher. My mother taught elementary school and later to adults English as a second language. My father was a lawyer. So communication was always something that we were talking about. We would have fascinating conversations about words. My father was very precise and concise. My mother was very into how do we motivate, how do we get people engaged. So all growing up, communication was really important to me. And in school, in at the university level, I discovered communication by accident, actually, and fell in love with it. Something I'm passionate about. I went to graduate school to get a degree in it, had to go work to pay off some student loans, and in the workplace saw how clearly the ability to effectively communicate impacted people's careers. And it was fascinating to me. Some of the best and the brightest people struggled in their communication and weren't as successful as those who perhaps weren't as insightful or engaged, but could communicate better. And when I had the opportunity to come back to teaching, which is passion, I jumped at it, and I've been teaching and coaching communication ever since. And I got a lot of gray hair. It's been 25 plus years that I've been doing that.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's fabulous. I love the full circleness of coming from educator and a lawyer, and then, finding that focus of communication, which you knew all along from them, and then kind of turning that into this fun, amazing career that you've got going. I love that. Okay, good. Love it. Love it. So were there any of those questions that you specifically want to focus on? Let me know, and I'll let you add it. But as you're thinking about that, Matt, I'm curious if you have tips that you plan to share today. Are they all for presenting specifically? Because you see, we've got some people thinking about interviews or thinking about interdepartmental communication. I know my own story is that you can put me on a stage for a prepared presentation in front of thousands of people, and I'm kind of in my element, but you put me in a networking event and I am losing it. I am so nervous going in. I avoid it. I know they're good for my career. I know they're good for me. I usually walk out having met some delightful, lovely people, and I'm so glad that I did it. But holy cow, working up the courage to get in there. I have to play all sorts of tricks to get myself to enter that networking space. I kid you not, Matt, this just happened a month and a half ago. I was at an evening networking cocktail sort of thing for a group that I was going to be presenting for the very next day. And I was so nervous that when the CEO walked up to introduce himself to me again, I forgot who he was. I was like, oh, are you one of the participants in my class tomorrow? I mean, rookie, horrible mistake, not recognizing the CEO, even though he and I'd worked together multiple times. It was just pure nerves, right? So do we have tips that are presenting specific, or do they apply to these other scenarios that we're experiencing?
So I believe a lot of what I talk about and teach and coach people on applies across communication situations. That said, there are specific things that we have to consider for every speaking situation and context. Communication needs to be adjusted and adapted for contexts and cultures that it takes place in. But there are some foundational principles that I think all of us could benefit from in terms of what we say, how we say it, when we say it, regardless of context. So some advice I might give you in a small talk situation like you just described will be very similar to some advice I would give to somebody who's getting up on a big stage, giving a presentation. Now, how you execute on that will depend specifically to your situation. So yeah, communication is one of those things where if you get some foundations down, it will help you in many, many different situations.
Okay. Well, we're going to get some of those foundational skills then, right? You're going to give us those.
Absolutely. Happy
That's
to do
great.
so. Yeah.
I see that Rama pointed out that her anxiety around communication comes from English not being her first language. Oh my goodness. Anytime anyone has to, I think, function in a secondary language that just increases that anxiety level. Sabrina says we should team up. I'm thinking she's talking about networking there.
Yes.
You can be my networking buddy because I hate it. And
Yes,
Tim
it's
is
hard. It's
challenged
hard, but
with,
it can be really fun.
yeah. Tim is challenged presenting broad strategies. Oh, when the time is so short, which it always is. Yeah. So yeah, I've got some ideas for Tim as well. Let's start with those foundationals. What do you want us to know to really I think you use the phrase in your LinkedIn learning course, greet the anxiety. You want to talk a little bit about that and some of those foundational
So
skills?
let's start with anxiety, and then I'll talk about a few other things as well. So anxiety looms large in all communication. Those of us who have studied it believe firmly that it is part of being human. It's ingrained in being human. We see it in every culture we study, and we see it develop at certain time periods in people's lives. Specifically, when young children move into their teenage years, we see a big spike in this anxiety. So those of us who study it believe it's just normal and natural. That said, we can still manage it. And there are two primary approaches we have to take to be able to address this anxiety. First, we have to deal with the symptoms. That's what we feel physiologically. And then we have to deal with the symptoms. Those are the things that initiate and exacerbate it. So, Brenda, let me ask you, and anybody listening in can type into the chat. I'd love to know what is the physical manifestation or manifestations that happen for you? I turn red and I perspire. I blush and I sweat. What?
Mine are I speed up my rate of speech.
Yes.
I talk too
Yep.
quickly.
Yep.
And I pace. If I'm on a stage or a front of a group, I start to pace back and forth, I think is a sign of my anxiety.
Absolutely. And that's very, very common. So let me give some tips to everybody listening about ways to manage symptoms. And then I want to talk about some of the sources as first and foremost, deep belly breathing can help you. The kind you would do if you've ever done yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, where you really fill your lower abdomen. What this does is it causes our autonomic nervous system to relax. It slows down our heart rate. It slows down our respiration. It lowers our respiration. When we get nervous, we breathe very shallow. And when you take some deep belly breaths, you end up breathing more fully. And when I say this, I mean simply take a 3 count in and a 6 count out. The magic happens on the exhalation. So you want your exhale to be longer than your inhale. And you only have to do this 2 or 3 times. And the benefits are many. One, we stop feeling our heart beating so fast. For people like yourself, Brenda, who speak quickly, that's because you are breathing shallow. Your voice is a wind instrument. So the more you do with your voice, the more you do with your breath, the more it will affect your voice. So you're breathing faster and more shallow. So you speak fast. You down. It grounds you and helps you makes you be more present. So there's a lot that you can do. I see a few people like Jimmy has some sweating, voice shaking. Let me give a couple bits of advice there. If you shake, that's adrenaline. Adrenaline's purpose is to move you from threat to safety. So move, but move with a purpose. Don't sway and rock. Instead, when you start, lean in, gesture broadly. If you're standing, take a step towards your audience, big, broad. By moving purposely, you give that adrenaline a place to go and you stop shaking as much. If you're sweaty like me, that's your core body temperature going up. Your heart's beating faster, your body's tensing up. It's like you're exercising. When most of us exercise, we turn red and we sweat. So we need to cool ourselves down. A great way to cool yourself down is to hold something cold in the palms of your hand. The palms of your hand are thermoregulators for your body. I start any major speech, I'm always holding a cold glass of water and it cools me down. We've all done this in reverse on a cold morning. If you've ever held a warm cup of coffee or tea and felt it warm you up. So these are just some of the things we can do to manage those symptoms. Do you think deep breathing might help you, Brenda? You think that would be beneficial?
I do. I was even doing it as you were talking about it. I was doing the 3 count in, the 6 count out. I was like, I already feel just a little more grounded, a little less anxious about being live. Is the technology going to work? All the things that cause stress. I loved your phrase that our voice is a wind instrument.
Yes.
And I think, Matt means that very literally. Like our vocal cords, the wind comes through those vocal cords, and that's what creates vocality. And in fact, And there's some really interesting studies that the pitch of your voice, then,
Mhm.
the smaller your vocal cord, the higher your pitch. That's the reason little children's voices pitch higher, is because their vocal cords are smaller, so there's not as much wind moving through their wind instrument. Some interesting gender studies around that too, that women and men's vocal cords are not there's not enough difference in the width of those to account for the difference in pitch. So some of our pitch may be socialized rather than nature, more nurture than
Mhm.
nature. But regardless of that, I think it's interesting that if we get stressed and we start clenching those vocal cords, our wind instrument might pitch higher. And so for some people, one of the symptoms that they may or may not even notice of
Mhm.
their anxiety is that they tend to pitch unnaturally high, and just that belly breath, which opens the vocal cords back up, can allow for the air to do its
Mhm.
job, and away we go, right? So
Thank you for the masterclass on breath, because it is so important, and there are things we can do to manage it. Most of us don't think about the impact we can have on our voices. One of the things I encourage everybody I work with is to read out loud. Reading out loud gives you an opportunity to think about your voice in a way you don't, because the words are written. You don't have to be using that cognitive effort to think about what to say. So you can pay attention to, how am I saying it? Where is my breath in my body? Is it high? Is it low? And it gives you a more sense of awareness. And it has the added benefit I call vocal stamina. You know, unless you do what I do for a living, which is talk a lot. Prior to being here with you today, I lectured for 3 hours in 2 different classes. Most people don't speak that long.
right.
It's just like running a marathon. Very few people wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go run a marathon. You have to train to build up to that mileage. To be able to speak for a long period of time, you have to train, and reading out loud, just like running on a treadmill, is a proxy for doing the real event. So I love that you voice deeply. I have a lot to learn from you, and all of us can learn to better control our breath and, in turn, control our voice.
Yeah, I love the idea of reading aloud, because I also think that if we're not sure about our pacing, we can always read a passage, because you can highlight a passage and immediately know this is 150 words, this is 200 words, and then read it with your clock running, your stopwatch
Mhm.
running, and see where you hit.
Mhm.
And isn't the range like something like around, what is it, 150 to 180?
Yeah, so the average fluent English speaker speaks about 150 to 180 words a minute. Interestingly, we can understand pretty reliably twice that. That's why many people can listen to a podcast or watch a show or YouTube 2x speed. It's hard to speak that way,
Yeah.
but varying your rate is a useful way to engage people. So if I really want people, or I might slow down a little bit. So when we vary from that norm, people pay more attention. So that's why vocal variation is so important.
Yeah. So getting a sense of what that 150 to 180 feels like in
Yes.
practice, in reading aloud, and then varying it though for engagement, for grabbing your audience's interest. I love that. We've
Yes.
talked about sweaty palms, hold something cold. We've talked about hands and voice shaking, our deep breathing. We've got someone that says that they stammer a lot.
Mm.
Any
When they
thoughts?
get nervous, yeah. So
Yeah.
a lot that can be just a cognitive load issue.
Mm,
If you normally have a stammer or stutter when you speak, it's a different thing. That's an ingrained thing that can be worked on. But if it happens more frequently while speaking, often and when nervous, it often has to do with cognitive load. Like a computer. It's not a great analogy, but when you are under stress and you're thinking through a lot of things, you can't be as focused as you want. This is why memorization and trying to be perfect in your communication gets in the way. And I know several people said non-native speaking is a challenge, and it is. And part of that reason is we want to say it right. I'm here to tell you, after decades of doing this work, there is no right way to say it, and pressure we put on ourselves to say it right and just focus on getting our ideas across rather than saying them exactly the right way, we actually reduce that cognitive load, and we stammer less, we blank out less, we have more affect in what we're saying because we have more cognitive bandwidth to put behind it. So I like to tell people it's about connection, not perfection. The goal of communication is to connect. The root of the word common. The way you make common is to connect with the other person, make your content relevant. So if you focus your energy there rather than on memorizing a script or saying the words exactly right, you end up communicating more effectively. So I believe some stammers will be reduced. One, if you start managing anxiety, and two, remind yourself that there is no one right way to say what you're saying. And the reality is this: your audience only knows what you say. They don't know what you intended.
So true.
When you focus on that, it can help reduce some of those signs like stammering.
Yeah, that is so true that they don't know. When you talked about connecting and that is our goal, that strikes me, you know, like it's, and if we've scripted, it's hard to feel connected because I'm in my head bringing up that next word, that next word, that next word, rather than really trying to look at my audience, see in their eyes, notice their responses. It's so hard to connect if I've scripted. Plus, even if we are great memorizers and we really can get through a whole speech without dropping a single word that then typically though then causes us to freeze, the syntax is different in the written document. So if I've started with a script, my sentence length is a little bit different. My where I pause to breathe is different. It just will never sound as natural as if I never scripted to begin with. It's just hard to work it backwards, I think.
I think that's exactly right. For some people, especially non-native speakers, writing things out can be very helpful. But then you need to immediately move away from the word for word scripting and do something that works for you. Perhaps it's an outline, maybe bullet points. Some people work visually. I'm a huge fan. You asked for some of the fundamentals of structure. Structure is fundamental to all communication, a logical connection of ideas. If you have a structure, you don't need every word. I'll give you an example. The most common structure that people are familiar with is problem, solution, benefit. If you've ever seen a television ad, you've seen problem, solution, benefit. The ad starts with some issue, challenge in the world. Their product or service fixes it, and then you benefit in some way. If I know solution, benefit, that's my roadmap. I don't need every word exactly how to say it. I just know that I'm going to explain the problem to you. I will then transition to explaining the solution and then the benefit. So it's directionality without word for word, step by step instruction. And that is so powerful. In most challenging speaking situations, there are structures you can rely on to help. So in a job interview, there are structures for answering questions. In small talk, there are ways of querying flow better. Giving feedback is the same thing. So finding and becoming comfortable with structure is hugely important in all communication.
Yeah, I think so. For Tim, who was talking about having to get a lot of information across in a short amount of time, structure's your friend. If you have some of those go-tos that you know the topic that you're speaking to, the audience that you're speaking to, that problem solution benefit is relevant for the topic and it's going to resonate with them, boom, you've got it. And just the shorter the time amount, the shorter you spend. Maybe the problem is only 2 sentences. The solution is 1 sentence, the benefits 3 sentences, and you're done, you know? Or I see someone is talking about they've read your recent book and they're loving what, so what, now what.
Yes,
So
my
talk about
favorite
that one
structure.
a
I
little
see
bit.
Erica said that.
Teach
Thanks,
us that
Erica.
one. That's a great one.
Yeah, so it's my favorite structure because it's like a Swiss Army knife. You can use it in so many ways. What, so what, now what is 3 questions that if you answer, not only do you provide a very logical, concise response, but it also helps you formulate your thoughts. So the what is the information you're talking about. Could be your update, your product, your service, your feedback, your answer to a question. The so what is why is it important and relevant to the person you're speaking to? So it means we have to focus on them, not us. Critical in all communication. And then finally, the now what is the next step? Maybe it's let me take your questions, or let me share with you the dependencies and contingencies for the next phase, or sign on the bottom line, or let's set up another meeting. So you can use this in many ways to help you. In fact, I don't want to get too meta, Brenda, but I just answered your question in What So What Now What. I told you what it was, how you can use it,
And
and
how it
why it's
benefits.
important.
Oh,
Right.
you did. Oh, yes.
So,
Brilliant.
and I'll give you one added bonus with this. When you're in small talk, which you said was one of your challenging situations, rather than using the structure to create your response, you can simply use the structure to serve as the main way of engaging. So, for example, you could just ask a person, "Hey, what brings you here? What did you find interesting?" And when they answer, you could say, "Oh, so why is that important to you? What's the relevance there?" And then you could share, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to use that in this way." So
Yeah.
simply asking what now what is a great tool for moving conversation forward. So just like Erica, I find it a very useful structure and one that can really help.
Yeah, love that. Sharik, thank you. In the theater of communication, your calm is your costume. Rehearse it daily. Yeah, that's
I love that. I love that. I have
great.
not heard that, and I have heard a lot about anxiety management. I love it. Calm is your costume. Perfect.
That's right. I love that. Mina was still talking about symptoms, is that she speaks quickly. I feel that one. I do that one. And
I'll
chew
give
your
you another
lips.
thing you can do. If you're a fast talker, gesture more slowly. We sync
Oh,
up our speaking speed and our gesturing speed. I can guarantee almost any of you who are fast talkers gesture quickly as well. It is easier to control gesture speed because you can either slow them down or make them broader. Both of those will cause you to slow down your speaking rate. So fast talkers, deep breathe and gesture more broadly.
how interesting. Okay. The one symptom that I frequently hear clients talk about that didn't come up today, but is dry mouth. So we've talked a lot about
Mm.
sweating and getting wet, but what about the opposite when I'm so dry that suddenly, now maybe because we're holding that cold glass of water to use our regulator, we just take a sip. But what do you do for the dry mouth? Any suggestions there?
Yes, and it's very normal. Your body is very smart, and you knows that when you're under threat, fight or flight, it wants to maximize its efficiency. That's why many of us feel nauseous or we have to go to the bathroom. Your body's like, let's get rid of extra baggage. We want to just be present with what we need at a minimal level. Saliva is one of those things. If you're being chased or threatened, you're not going to eat a 3-course meal, so we don't need all that saliva. The unfortunate thing is we do when we speak, so we get that dry mouth. The best way to reactivate your salivary glands are 3 things. 1, take some warm water, lukewarm warm water, swish it around your mouth. If you've ever used a mouthwash, same thing. Do the same thing. Obviously not while you're speaking, before. Same thing with chewing some gum or sucking on a lozenge. Those activities reactivate the salivary glands and they give you what you need. So if you know you are somebody who traditionally gets dry mouth, prepare for that in advance. Chew some gum, water, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah. If it still happens, I have found that if you just bite lightly on the edge of your tongue, so I'm
Mm.
on stage, I forgot the warm water. I can't put gum in because I'm already presenting.
Yeah.
The first question that comes in, I kind of do one of these. You're doing it right now, Matt.
Yeah.
Is it
I'm
working? Did it
trying. I'm
create?
trying. Well, it's interesting. There's another technique for anxiety management. And this sounds crazy, but it seems to work. Take your tongue and just let it feel really heavy in your mouth. If you when you get nervous, notice where your tongue goes. For most people, the tongue goes up to the top
Yeah.
of the roof of your mouth. So if you want to relax it and just feel the tongue heavy in your mouth before you start speaking, and it can actually bring calm to your body. When many people meditate, they'll relax their tongue. There's some forms of meditation where you actually adjust where your tongue is in your mouth. That's different. But there are things you can do with your tongue, as said, that can help you. Who knew? Might as well try it.
Right. And poor Shelby's going to have the weirdest looking video afterwards to
Yeah, yeah,
deal
we're
with on this. So there's
both.
me going because I'm doing it as you're
and
saying.
you- and you know those are the ones that Shelby will certainly pick. So
All right, so we've talked a lot about symptoms and maybe some of the ways we can deal with that. But you said there were 2 pieces to sort of managing anxiety. There's
yes,
the dealing with these physical and mental manifestations of it, and then the other piece
is sources. So where does the anxiety come from? And we actually spoke about one just a few moments ago when we talked about perfection.
Yeah.
One source of anxiety is our desire to be perfect. And the remedy for that is to focus on connecting and reminding yourself that there is no right way to speak. There are better ways and worse ways. Another example of a source of anxiety is the goal we're trying to achieve. I argue, and I think it's good advice, you goal when you communicate. But sometimes that goal can be so overbearing that we're nervous about not achieving it. So the entrepreneurs I coach are afraid of not getting the funding they want.
Right.
The students I teach are afraid of not getting the good grade. You might be afraid of not having your idea or project supported. So what's making us nervous is a potential negative future outcome. So
Yeah.
we're made nervous by what might happen in the future. And
I
a
might
way
not
to
get the job offer at this
or
interview.
get the good grade or get the funding. So
Yeah.
the way to short circuit our concern about the future is to become present oriented. So the source of our anxiety is a potential negative future outcome. And the way to remedy it is to be in the moment, present. And there are
Hmm.
lots of ways to get present oriented. Do something physical, walk around the building, do some light exercise. You can listen to a song or a playlist like athletes do. You can start at 100 and count backwards by challenging numbers. Like start at 100 and count back 17s. That's really hard, but it makes you present oriented. You're doing the math in your head. I like to say tongue twisters. Before
Hmm.
I ever speak in public, I will say the same tongue twister 3 times out loud. Nobody ever hears me say it, but it gets me present oriented and it warms up my voice. And anybody who's ever exercised knows you should warm up before you do a sport. You should warm up before you speak. Many of us have this silly notion that we can go from silence to brilliance in our communication. And of us, it's not that easy to do. So,
Well, that's such a good point with no warm up. While there's this woodwind instrument that we're
right,
dealing with, woodwinds warm up before the orchestra plays. Plus,
absolutely,
all the muscles. My gosh, there's so many muscles involved in the mouth, the tongue, the jaw. All those articulators need to be firing on all
Mhm.
cylinders when we're communicating. And yet, you're right. We rarely have a warm up, even though we wouldn't dare go out for a run without a quick stretch or something. That's really
Absolutely, absolutely.
love that. So, okay, so we want to get focused on what is causing it.
Mhm.
Perfectionism, we've talked a little bit about. We've talked about that
Goals,
fear of future state.
yes,
And the solution there is get present.
yes,
Perfectionism, give up on being perfect. You're not going to be. Go for connection. That's what we're striving for.
absolutely, absolutely. And by doing that, more comfortable and calm.
Yeah. I think the perfectionism piece, I had a student one time who talked about how he was so nervous about being nervous. Like it was, and he ended up writing an essay when he went off to graduate school that he shared with me. And he talked about the lesson for him was not that he said, feeling nervous about speaking is okay as long as I know feeling nervous about speaking is okay. It was almost like that embracing of
Yeah.
the
It's
very thing
normal
that,
and natural. And mindfulness, and many people have heard about mindfulness. Mindfulness teaches us that when we have an emotion, positive or negative, to just greet it and say, this is me feeling that way. It makes sense. In terms of speaking in front of others, it makes sense that you're nervous. It's something where you're taking a risk. And by giving yourself that moment to say, normal and natural, it actually gives you a sense of agency. It builds in a little space where you can do something like take a deep breath, like walk around the building. So I like this notion of acknowledging it internally. What I don't like is acknowledging it externally. So
yes.
many people will say things like, I am such a nervous speaker, you'll have to forgive me, thinking that what they're going to do is invoke empathy and sympathy from the audience. But really, what you're doing is just priming the audience to pay attention to everything you do that confirms anxiety. So you're actually distracting them from your message because you've clued them into I'm nervous. And now they're saying, oh, yeah, he's nervous. I see him shaking or he's walking a lot, instead of just having them pay attention to your message. So really important to internalize and acknowledge the anxiety, but not to externalize it.
Love that. Yeah. When you mentioned they'll notice that you're nervous. We had a lot of people with the shaking hands, and I always suggest not holding notes, especially notes on something big, because then a little bitty tremor in my hand ends up looking like this huge quake on the paper. Instead, just if you need your notes, put them somewhere where you can see them, but don't, I wouldn't encourage you to hold on to them. And not only can the audience notice it, but I think we create something of a, a circuit into ourselves, like, oh gosh, I didn't realize I was nervous, but look, my notes are shaking. I must be nervous. And we just,
Absolutely. If movement I talked about doesn't work when you shake, there's a trick that it seems weird, but it really works. You just have to give that energy a place to go. In the show, in your shoes with your toes, just squeeze them while you're standing, and it can stop the shakiness. It gives that energy a place to go. I worked with an individual once many years ago who was an ultra marathon runner. This guy ran Lord knows how many miles. He had, if it were possible to have body fat, this guy did. He was skinny as a pole. And when he got nervous, his shirt would flutter because he was shaking. And as soon as he started squeezing his toes in his shoes, it went away. You want to do something that people can't see. A lot of people will hold like a pen in their hand and they'll squeeze the pen. But much like you're saying, you'll see it shake, or what they do invariably is they start clicking it, or I actually saw somebody disassemble a pen, the string shot out. So you have something to do that gives that energy a place to go. Squeezing your toes in your shoes is a wonderful example of that.
Well, especially for someone used to, in that particular instance, he's used to being athletic. He's used to movement. Movement is his go-to space.
Yeah.
If we go back to the mindsets, that idea of it's okay. It's okay. It's human. It's normal to be. I have coached a few people, and we'll see if anyone here can identify with it. When I ask them to describe their physical symptoms, and they tell us things just like we saw, butterflies in my stomach, my heart rate goes up, I get sweaty, I get dry mouth, they're describing all of this. And then if I happen to know them well, I can say, and now describe how you feel when you go to get on that roller coaster that you paid money to go on, or that scary movie that you paid money to go to. And they're like, oh, well, my stomach clenches and my heart rate goes up and I get sweaty. And I'm like, so the physical manifestation between excitement and anxiety isn't that different. And so it's just the language that we use to describe it sometimes. So if I feel myself amping up like that before a presentation or a networking event, I try to remind myself that I'm excited about this. This is exciting. And sometimes that helps a little bit.
So on my podcast, Think Fast, Talk Smart, I have the wonderful privilege of interviewing lots of deep thinkers about communication, academics, etc. And Kelly McGonigal, many of you might know Kelly, a huge, very popular TED Talk on making stress your friend. She likes to talk about how anxiety is actually a signal that she cares, that it's a sign that I care about this, and that's why I'm feeling nervous. My colleague and friend, Allison Wood Brooks, she teaches at Harvard's Business School. She did some initial research into the information you're talking about. It was her work that showed if we can get people to reframe the physiological things that we're having, not as anxiety, but as excitement, people actually perform better. That is, they feel better about it, and people actually believe their communication is better. So the same symptoms you feel when you feel anxiety, heart rate going up, body sweating, shakiness, those are exactly the same signs you have when something exciting happens. If I told you you won the lottery and you have millions of dollars coming your way, you would start to sweat, your heart rate would go up, you'd get a little shaky. But in that case, you're really excited. When your boss tells you symptoms, you don't feel the same way. So the way we reframe things matters a tremendous amount.
Absolutely. I love that. Let's glance at our, we see some great comments coming in. Let's hit some of these. The best tip I'm using for Matt is holding the cup of coffee in parens in my hand.
As long as if you sweat and perspire, you just want it to be iced coffee, not hot coffee. Hot coffee is only going to make you hotter.
And maybe not, and maybe decaf. Haven't I heard you talk about dose of caffeine a little bit?
Very good. So caffeine, while planning a communication, can be helpful. There's some research that says we tend to be a little more creative when we're a little caffeinated. I think it really means that we're just not tired. We're more creative when we're not tired. But caffeine can amp up any anxiety symptoms. So if you're somebody who shakes, drinking a lot of caffeine prior will cause some shakiness. The bottom line is this: you caffeine consumption much, because if you're somebody who drinks a lot of caffeine and all of a sudden you stop before you speak, you might have negative consequences from that. Similarly, don't take extra caffeine when you're about to communicate, because that can just take whatever physiological symptoms you're having and make them worse.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Guido talked about being nervous. Oh, so, yeah. Oh, cold coffee, David was talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very good.
Guido
That
said,
makes
when we're
sense.
nervous, we have to speak in front of people. I hate to be nervous, but his mind switch was, this nervousness gives me energy. Exactly. That's
Yeah,
that
helps you focus,
reframing.
gives
And
you energy. You bet.
it sounds
You
like
bet.
you got science behind your intuition there. I love that.
That's true. That's true.
Pat wants to know how much time we, you and I, feel like we can be in the present moment when we present. What helps you to stay present? That's a great question, Pat, especially, yeah, given some of how much of our waking hours is not in the moment. Do you want to go first, Matt, or you want me
No,
to
I'm
hop
happy
in?
to hear yours. I love learning from you. So
So
happy to
I
listen.
actually think presenting is one of those times when I am very, very present. In fact, a friend one time asked me, where do you most want to be when life is kind of a mess? You know, if you've got bad things going on in your life, where do you want to be? And I was like, in front of a class, in front of a classroom. And she was stunned, because, you know, you expect the answer to be on a beach, in the woods, curled up in my, you know, in my sofa or whatever. And I was like, no, because in all of those places, my mind will still be thinking about all the stuff going on in life that I don't want to think about. When I'm in that classroom, when I'm in front of an audience, in front of a group, because it is about connection, it just, everything is right there, and the world sort of just disappears for me outside of the walls of that room. So certainly, Pat, not 100%, but one of the highest levels of being present for me is actually when I am presenting. Matt, what's your experience been? How do you stay present?
I can echo what you're saying. The same is true for me. When I am teaching, when I am presenting, I am very present. And in fact, I gravitate towards those situations because it feels good. Now, the question I also heard was, how do you sustain it? So when I am teaching, when I am communicating, when I am being interviewed, I'm listening in a way that I don't typically listen. My wife will attest to that. I'm listening for the bottom line. I'm listening for, how can I take what's being said and move things forward? So I use listening as a tool to get present. I remind myself that whenever I communicate, I am in service of the audience I'm communicating to. And that also pulls me into the present, because if I'm in service of you and your needs, be it my students, the people I coach, people who listen to my podcast, all of that forces me to be very present in order to deliver on that expectation that I'm here to bring some value. So for me, being in the present moment is delightful. I really enjoy it. And I use listening and reminding myself of the expectation that I'm bringing value to really help.
I love that. I hope you're all reading the comments. We've had some great nuggets of advice from other viewers today. So make sure you're learning from one another, some really great content. Matt, if we didn't get enough of Matt today, and we need more Matt, where
I'm not
can
sure
we
anybody needs more Matt, but
we're just not sure we've quite wrapped our heads around managing our anxiety and being the best communicators we can be. Where can we find more?
Well, thank you first and foremost for the conversation. I love when I can be engaged and learn, and I certainly did that. So, I invite all of you to listen to Think Fast, Talk Smart. It's a podcast dedicated to communication. We have short 20-minute episodes. We just released our 200th episode. We've been around for a while. Invite everybody to listen. And the best place to find me is either on LinkedIn, or go to fastersmarter.io, and you have access to resources I have, the podcast writings I've done, others research, really useful. Please take the time to improve your communication skills. And if I can be of service on that journey, please take advantage of the stuff I put out.
I love that. I've been to Matt's resource page. There's one document specifically for communication anxiety. So just a great summary and expansion of the kinds of tips we've been talking about today. Matt, thank you again so much for making the time to be here. Everyone, again, check out Matt's content on LinkedIn Learning. He has some great courses there. Check out his Think Fast, Talk Smart podcast and the resource pages on his website. Thank you all for being here. Have a great day.
Thank you.